Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to finish the second half of the digestive system today. If you remember, we just finished with the stomach and talked about everything happens in the stomach. So right now, your food that you ate and is in the stomach about 2 to 4 hours later, that food that was in your stomach is now like become a soupy kind of soupy. Yes, soupy is probably the best word for it. Soupy substance or soupy liquid. That's called chyme. And that chyme is going to enter into your small intestine. So right away, right at that entrance to your small intestine, you have these what are called accessory organs that that have tubes that go into your small intestine, that very first part of small intestine. And we're going to talk about the roles that each of these accessory organs have. So they are the pancreas, the gallbladder, and the liver. So starting with the gallbladder's primary role is to store bile. We're going to talk about what bile is, but its primary role is to store bile. The liver produces the bile. So this is the big distinction. The liver produces the bile, but the gallbladder stores it. So that's kind of its role for the gallbladder. And the bile duct is a long tube that carries the bile from the gallbladder to the small intestine. Bile. So bile's role is very important because it does this process called emulsifies. Kind of a cool word to say, emulsifies. And basically what that does is it breaks apart fats. It makes like this glob of fat into small little droplets, which of course increases surface area. You'll see a lot of that theme in this unit of digestion, where we're constantly trying to increase the surface area of the food so that we can make the digestion more efficient. So bile is a bitter, greenish yellow alkaline fluid, alkaline meaning basic, that's stored in the gallbladder between meals, and upon eating is discharged into the duodenum, where it aids in the process of digestion. So duodenum, for you guys that don't know, is the first part of the small intestine. The small intestine is split into 3 parts, but the first part is called the duodenum. Another cool word to say. So then we're going to move to pancreas. So pancreas is an organ which secretes both digestive enzymes, which we're going to focus on, and hormones, which we might focus on later. Pancreas is the source for insulin, and the opposite one, which is called glucagon. But we're going to focus on enzymes because that's what's going to do a lot of the digestion. So again, nearly all the digestion occurs in the small intestine, and all digestion is completed in the small intestine. So a lot of the digestion that occurs with your food, again, when I talk about digestion, remember it's breaking down your food, breaking down these complex sugars to very simple sugars, these complex proteins to simple amino acids, these complex fats to these triglycerides. So it's breaking these things down to simple parts that we can easily absorb into our body and use for whatever we need. So you guys need to know a couple of digestive enzymes that are produced by the pancreas, and you need to know what they do. So as far as the test is concerned, you need to know, it would be like a matching type question where I would have trypsin or chemotrypsin and you would need to highlight proteins, or vice versa. That's the extent of what you need to know. It's purely the association of the enzyme to what it digests. So trypsin and chemotrypsin digest proteins. Starch, amylase, you guys already know that. And then you have buffers, which will naturally neutralize the acid from the stomach. So you have your stomach here, and that chyme, which is very, very acidic, enters in your small intestine. Right away you have buffers that neutralize the acid. And then you have the pancreas, which leads into the first part of the small intestine. And then you have the gallbladder, which has liver, or which has bile, is released into the small intestine. And again, this section here is called the duodenum of the small intestine. Here's another picture. You can pause it if you want to take a better look at it. The liver. And liver has many functions, but as far as digestion is concerned, it produces bile. That's its main role, which is then stored in the gallbladder and which emulsifies fats. So pretty simple. And yeah, so we might talk about the other roles of liver, but as far as digestion, it just produces bile. And we already know what bile does. All right, a little review. Again, we talked about what happens in the mouth, what happens in the stomach, happens in the pancreas, what happens in the liver. So now we're going to move to the small intestine. So with the small intestine, like I stated, most chemical digestion takes place here. So actual digestion occurs in the small intestine, or most of it, I should say, occurs in the small intestine. This is where simple sugars and proteins are absorbed in the inner lining as well. So not only are we doing most of digestion, but we're also doing almost all absorption. So again, the point of this whole process is to absorb these nutrients in our body so we can use them. So the absorption process occurs in the small intestine as well. And fatty acids and glycerol, aka like fats, lipids, this is referring to. It goes to the lymphatic system, which we haven't talked about. Not too big of a deal. What is a big deal is the small intestine is lined with these structures called villi, which kind of poke out. This is a good example. They poke out here, and it increases surface area for absorption. So if I'm like a protein, or I guess I should say an amino acid, I'm kind of floating along the small intestine, I go into here and I get absorbed into the blood, and from the blood I go throughout the entire body. So that's kind of how it works. And the point of the villi, these structures that point out like that, they increase the surface area, making it more likely that this little amino acid is going to be floating by and eventually hit one of these and get absorbed. Small intestine, some functions, and compare the structure. Chemical digestion, again, we have most of digestion occurs, and then we have the absorption also occurring. Some facts. Small intestine is over 6 meters long, which is around it's around 18 feet, give or take. So huge amounts, very long, and then that surface area with all that villi being in there has a huge surface area. It's basically equivalent to a tennis court, which is kind of amazing. You have the surface area of a tennis court in your small intestine. Pretty crazy to think about. Structure has 3 sections, like I referred to before. You have the duodenum, which is that first section. The next section is called the jejunum, which is where most of absorption takes place. And then finally you have the ileum, which is also used for absorption. Duodenum, as first section, that's where most of the digestion happens. This is where we get all those juices from the pancreas, the liver, gallbladder, and so on. Absorption is thought to occur directly through the wall without the need for special adaptations, like I kind of showed you before. Almost 90% of our daily fluid intake is absorbed in the small intestine. So when you take that swig of water or whatever else, it's absorbed in the small intestine, and primarily through these guys called villi, which increase the surface area. Here's another example of the villi. Kind of you see here how it has the projections here, and that's all the way all along your entire small intestine. And here's a magnification of that particular villi, and you see inside of it you have your capillaries. You have veins and arteries that are able to absorb the nutrients. And also another thing that we have on the villi is we have what are called microvilli, which are even smaller little projections that again increase surface area. That's a big theme in this whole unit, is increase in surface area. Definitely important. You should understand what that means. Hint, hint. So we do absorption through the villi, microvilli, and it increases surface area for absorption. Some of the pictures. Then we move to the large intestine, which we call the colon. Its primary function is to reabsorb water. We use 9 liters of water every day in our digestive juices, so we don't want to waste all that water. It's a huge amount of water, so we don't want to waste it. We want to reuse it, so we're able to reabsorb it in the small intestine. So that's its main role. It has some other roles too, though. So in the cases of 90% water is reabsorbed, which means that, or greater than 90% of water, not enough water is reabsorbed, we get diarrhea. So that's kind of what diarrhea is. That's that your body not able to reabsorb all that water, and so you get diarrhea for whatever reason. If you get too much water absorbed, so it sucks up too much water, you get constipation. Unable to basically take a deuce. Next, we have the large intestine, which is kind of continuing in small intestine. Sorry, I'm trying to get through this fast. So large intestine, solid materials pass through the large intestine. We reabsorb those waters, and there are some undigestible solids that occur, and we call this fiber, basically, these fibers. So when you hear about your daily fiber intake, those are actually undigestible solids, but they're good for you because, as we'll see, they feed the bacteria that are in your large intestine. We also have vitamin K and B that are reabsorbed with the water happening, and then solid waste exits the body through the rectum. So, as I alluded to, we have a huge amount of bacteria in our large intestine, and it's there for a purpose. We actually get help. They help us. They help us function. They help us keep healthy. And an interesting part of that bacteria is called E. coli, which you've probably heard about before being very poisonous and very deadly. And yes, there are E. coli's that are deadly out there that if you take in, that they could potentially kill you. But this particular type of E. coli is actually helpful to you. And what it does is it not only produces vitamins for our body, but it also digest those undigestible foods, those fibers. And as a byproduct, they generate gas, like methane and hydrogen sulfide, which is where farts come from. A few other information. Your appendix, you might ask. You've heard that it's kind of useless, and that's actually true. It's a remnant of us being mostly vegetarian, and all vegetarians, all herbivores, I should say, have a much bigger appendix because that's what's used to digest a lot of those indigestible materials. And again, it's a vegetable organ, as you guys probably figured out. Okay, so that's it, guys. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Have a great night.